Hi everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to this episode of the Unleash and Thrive podcast. You're most welcome. I think about 2 weeks ago, I was sharing about some choices some women in the Bible made that took them into purpose. And one of the, one of the women that I didn't really share about was Ruth. But in this podcast, I'm going to be talking a little bit about I'm going to be talking mostly about Ruth and Naomi. We're talking about the power of association. But really, I want to share 7 purpose lessons that Naomi taught Ruth. There were some lessons that were so powerful. As I remember, I'm sharing from my book this week on Woman on Purpose with Purpose for a Purpose. So I remember as I wrote that book about 2 years ago, and as I got ready to write that book, I remember I heard him, Bishop T.D.Jakes, share this. I watched this message and it was so powerful. I said, no. I have to add this to my book because those lessons were so key. So I'm going to be sharing those 7 lessons for you. And really, when we look at association, like a lot of us know, associations are so powerful. Our associations can make us, our associations can mar us, especially in this day and age that we live in. The people that we associate with can determine if you're going to get to the top or if you're going to remain on the bottom. The associations that you allow in your life will determine often your destination. Your associations determine a whole lot about you. Your association determine a lot of time even the way you think, because as you begin to move with your association, your way of thinking may change for the good or it may change for the bad. So really, we must be really, really careful, and we must be very sensitive to our associations. We must really be careful about choosing the associations that we have. And we see this from the life of Naomi and Ruth. I shared in that, I think that 2 weeks ago, I was sharing that Naomi gave Orpah and Ruth 2 choices. So if for those who are not familiar with the story, Naomi had gone to the land with her husband. Her husband had gone to another land, and her husband had died. Not only did she lose her husband, she also lost her 2 sons, which was so sad. And here she was going back to her original, where she came from, her original land. And she said to her daughters-in-law, she said to both of them, Ruth and Orpah, you know what? I've lost everything. I don't really have anything else to give to you. I don't even have children that you can get married to. You guys just go back to your father's houses, you know, and I'm sure in her mind, she's thinking they could get married again. They will be able to find, great husbands to get married to. I'm sure she was thinking they're going to get, husbands to get married to. At least they're still young and everything. But she told them to go back to their father's houses. Oprah was, yeah, I'll go back to my father's house. But her other daughter-in-law, Ruth, did not want to go back. I'm sure, but on all this while they had been living with Ruth, Oprah, and Naomi, and their families had lived together. I'm sure Ruth had picked up some things from Naomi. I'm sure she had perceived how Naomi behaved. I just believe that there was something that drew her to Naomi. And as Naomi, cajoled them to go back to their father's houses, Ruth was like, no, I'm not going back. She said to her, wherever you go, that's where I'm going. Whoever is your God is going to be my God. There must be something that Ruth had seen in the life of Naomi that she said, you know what, I want to keep this association. I want to stay with this woman. There's something about this woman that I need to glean from. There's something about this woman that I need to learn from. And so Ruth decided that she was going with Naomi wherever Naomi went. So Oprah went back, but Ruth stayed with Naomi. And really, the end of the end of Ruth can only tell what a good association it was. I know it's so important for us to let God lead us into the associations in our lives. It's so important to just let God lead us, because I believe that God led now Ruth to stay with Naomi. But the interesting thing I find that they went back to Naomi's native land, and here she was. Naomi didn't have anything, but God now began to use Ruth to do something in Naomi's life. I believe that God began to use Ruth to even encourage Naomi that there was still hope. It was like she had hope that, okay, maybe I don't know what's going to come out of this relationship between us, but God was using Ruth to encourage Naomi. But then something interesting happened. you know, I'm not going to go through the whole story, but there was this relative of Naomi, I would say, the relative of Naomi, a distant relative who along the line, Ruth didn't have anybody to get married to. Ruth wasn't even looking to get married. She was just looking to add value to Naomi's life. She was looking for how can I be, how can I make our lives, how can I help my mother-in-law to make our lives easier, or whatever way I can help her. And really, that comes with associations. I believe when you're associated with somebody, you shouldn't really look to how you can only take from them. We should also look at how can I be a blessing to this person. So as I believe, as Ruth was thinking, how can I, help this old woman so that the two of us can at least live our lives in a simple way, but at least we have a better life. As she was thinking of Naomi, Naomi was also thinking of her, and God was thinking of, was thinking of both of them, because guess what? The long and short of it was that the Naomi found out that there was a relative related to her who was not married and who possibly could be someone that Ruth could get married to. And so she almost like started the process. But there were these 7 things that Naomi taught Ruth even in this journey. And those 7 choices are things that as women of purpose, they are so important for us to take note of. So Ruth was in that current season of her life, but Naomi knew that there were still things that God wanted to do in Ruth's life. There were still so many things. So when it came to Boaz, these 7 things were so key. So the first thing that Naomi encouraged Ruth to do was to be focused. So when they had just come to a new land, there was so much going on. I'm sure Ruth was, there were people that she had not, she didn't know all these people before, but Naomi wanted Ruth to know that we are back here, but let us be focused on where we are and what we can do to move our lives forward. And so Ruth became focused on her presence. Naomi, as if we read the story, if we read that story of Ruth, I'm not going to go into the story, but we will see that as Naomi how she began to treat Ruth was that we're here, we're going to look for a way that we can fend for ourselves so that we won't become a liability to anyone. Because at this point in time, they had nothing. And, as Ruth began, I believe that as Ruth began to, bear on Naomi, guess what? She taught her to be focused. And we see this in that Naomi, and we see that in that Ruth decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to the fields. I'm going to begin to glean. And really here, to be focused here simply means to have direction. Naomi began to help Ruth get direction, even as they got into a new season. It was a new season in their lives. And so as women of purpose, it's so important for us to have focus. Even, let me put it this way, because one thing that when you have focus, there are things that focus does to you. Focus builds momentum. When you stay focused on one task, it helps you to be able to complete it with greater efficiency. Focus increases productivity. The more you stay on a task, the more tasks you'll be able to complete. We see this from the life of Ruth. As Ruth went to the fields daily, she was not distracted by the other people that came there to glean. She was not distracted by any other thing. All she was concerned with, I need to get food for my mother-in-law and I need to get food for me. And she was focused on it. And focus reduces stress. Focus, the same thing that focus does was focus produces better quality at work. Focus eliminates distraction. Ruth refused to be distracted. We saw this from her life. She would go there, do what she needed to do, and she would go back home. Focus helps you to prioritize your task. Focus trains your mind. There were so many things that she was able to do because Naomi had ingrained into her Ruth. Let's be focused on what we need to do in this season of our lives. And because of that, God really honored Ruth and God really honored Naomi. And the second thing, and now as this case of Boaz begin to come on the scene, the second thing that Naomi really helped Ruth to do was that she instructed her to do. Actually, she instructed her to wash her face. And somebody might say, oh, what does this mean? Wash your face. This was a new person that Naomi was going to be meeting. Remember, Naomi had gotten married in the past. She had lost her husband. But Naomi telling her to wash her face here was saying to her, leave the past in the past. This is the present. There are new things that God wants to do in your life. There are new territories God is calling you to take there. And that was almost what Naomi was saying to her, wash your face. And here I really just noted that, get a new perspective. Forget yesterday is gone. Today is a new day. And this is an encouragement to women of purpose. As you listen to this, What are the things that you've done in your life, things that have happened in the past? As a woman of purpose, you have to come to a point in your life whereby you have to say, I'm going to put the past behind. I'm going to learn the lessons of the past. But guess what? I'm going to move on to the future. I often say that if you're driving, and it's a famous quote, if you're driving and you're constantly looking at your rear view mirror, what's going to happen? You're going to have an accident. So it is important for you and I to say, no, I'm going to be focused on the future, which means leave your past behind. In the past, there would have been old ideas. So Ruth had to learn to leave yesterday's ideas behind. Ruth had to learn to leave yesterday's methods behind. My way of doing things with my husband, my way of my plans of the past, my lifestyle of the past, my setbacks of the past. I'm going to leave everything behind, because Naomi knew that if you were going to have anything to do with Boaz, you were going to have to, wash your face means change, almost like change your perspective. You're going to have to get a new way of thinking. You're going to have to get a new way of doing things. You're going to have to get a new lifestyle. That was almost what she was saying. It's so important as women of purpose to think, if I come into a new place, if I come into a new season, if I'm coming into what God has called me to do, I'm going to have to I'm going to have to let yesterday go. So if you're a woman and you're still holding on to yesterday, you cannot hold on to yesterday and tomorrow comes into view. Tomorrow will always be out of view until you let go of yesterday. It's almost like the way I'm holding on to I have clenched fist. Until I let yesterday go, I cannot actually embrace tomorrow. I can't. So washing your face, means that I'm going to let yesterday's opportunities, fine, there might be opportunities that might have come to Ruth while she was with her husband, but now that's yesterday. That's my past. So she left everything in Moab. Now she was in a new city. She was in a new place. She had to embrace the future. Just like the Bible says that we are transformed by the renewing of our mind. Even as Christians, when we come into the kingdom of God, we need to embrace God's ways of doing things. We have to let yesterday go and say, I'm going to embrace the new. I'm going to embrace the freshness. The third thing that Naomi asked Ruth to do was she told her to anoint her face. So what she was saying here was put on a fresh attitude. An attitude is so, I don't even know how to say this. Our attitude can determine a whole lot of things. Someone can have a stinky attitude, or you can have a great attitude. And often, I remember I heard this thing, I think from John Maxwell, he often says that if two people go for an interview and maybe the two of them have the same, the two of them are is down to their attitudes. So the two of them have done great at the interview and they really can't pick someone, who are we going to go with? But then they say, let's think of the person's attitude. Are they going to pick the person with the stinky attitude, or they're going to pick the person with the awesome attitude? When it comes down to attitude, they're going to look at the person that has the great attitude. So an attitude is a behavior that you choose. So Ruth knew that there might be some things Naomi, that there might be some things in Ruth's attitude of the past that were not going to help her to function in this season. So she said to her, anoint your face. Back in the day, an anointing oil was a form of it's almost like what makeup does for us nowadays. It freshens your face. It's like a form of refreshing. Oil at the time was something that when you put it on, it gave you a new look. It gave you a fresh look. That's almost like what makeup does, in today's world. But oil has that ability. So if you look at what oil does, oil anoints. So what is doing there is that it's giving you a new look. And the same way it's giving you a new look, that's exactly what an attitude is. Your attitude, if people have a sticky attitude, for example, people can perceive it from a long way, from a long distance, from the way you react, the way you behave. Sometimes we have not even said anything, but it's our body language. We've said everything with our eyes. We said anything with the way we are behaving towards them, that somebody already says, I don't want to do business with this person. I don't want to do anything having to do with this person. Why? Because of their attitude. So attitudes are so powerful. And that was why Naomi was saying to Ruth, she was almost saying to her, put on a cheerful attitude. So that everywhere you go, it's almost like everywhere you go, people just want to have something to do with it. They want to, be excited when you come into the room because you have this position, you're smiling, you're happy. Everybody wants to have something to do with you. Number 4 thing that Naomi said to Ruth was to change her garments. This one was a really interesting, and really changing your garments here signifies You know what? Preparing for your opportunities. So when you talk about, we're talking about women of purpose, preparing for your opportunities. Sometimes people think I have to wait for the opportunity before I prepare for it. But I love this quote that said that when opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare, which means that you and I must learn to prepare for our opportunities before we ever step into them. And how do you do this? You know, you prepare mentally, you prepare physically, you prepare for your opportunities in different ways. You prepare for your opportunities in looking at yourself. For example, your career, you want to prepare for your opportunities, which means you're going to say, what do I need to do to get into that position? I'm going to start to prepare right now. I'm thinking I want to be X, Y, and Z. What are the things that I need to do? What are the things that I need to prepare for? What are the things that are going to help me to get into that position? So Naomi was saying to Ruth here, if you're going to come to where he is, there are things that you're not going to be able to do the same way that you did in Moab. You're going to have to get a new perspective. You're going to have to get ready, like already Boaz is right there in front of you. So it was so powerful what Naomi asked her to do. What she was saying to her was, if you're expecting a new person, you have to begin to act like that person is already here. And so, as women of purpose, what does that mean to us? It simply means, what are those opportunities that we are trusting God for? Sometimes we are trusting God for opportunities. We're praying for certain opportunities that we want to come into, but we are not preparing for those opportunities. And what happens is that if you're not prepared for an opportunity, when it comes, because you don't have the capacity to handle the opportunity, often we would miss it. And so Naomi did not want Ruth to miss that opportunity. So she told her ahead of time, you know what, get ready. That's what she was saying to her. Change your garments so that it's not the same garment. She doesn't want you to come with she doesn't want to come with old garments. She wants you to come with fresh garments, with new garments. Do we understand? And then she didn't only tell her to change her garments. She then said something, which is number 5. She told Ruth to put the garments on before she needed to. And every time when I think of that one, it was so interesting. Which means it's still talking about praying for your opportunities, but it's saying here, step out in faith, get ready in faith. You might not see the opportunities right now, but begin to do it like you already did it. Faith often looks foolish to people, but Naomi was saying to Ruth here, it might look foolish, but guess what? Can you just trust me that this opportunity that I'm asking you to prepare for that is going to come your way? It's almost like when we look back at 2020, when COVID-19 happened. I wrote this in that book, that if a lot of people had known what Zoom was going to become today, I'm sure a lot of us would have bought Zoom shares. I'm sure a lot of us would have done things with Zoom. A lot of us would have, we would have prepared for all those opportunities. I'm sure even Zoom did not know the extent to which it was going to, blow out of proportion. Let me put it that way. How people were going to put a demand on watching on Zoom. Their stock went like that. It went so high at the time after COVID-19 because people began to put a demand on Zoom. So that's one of the ways that we can prepare. You begin to see that there's an opportunity in an area and you get ready. In fact, you have not even seen the opportunity. Maybe God begins to prod you that get ready for that opportunity. Someone that happened to was Esther. Esther was a peasant girl. Esther was an orphan girl. And at the time when she was called into the palace, when Esther was called into the palace with the other girls, when she was chosen, guess what? She had to go through 6 months of preparation because Esther could not just step into the palace without knowing the culture of the palace. Esther would not have been able to fit in the palace. So she needed to have been prepared. Also, there are some opportunities that God is bringing your way that maybe you need to prepare yourself. It might be personal development. Yes, so it might be some courses that you have to take in your area of expertise. And God is saying, do this course because I'm bringing an opportunity your way in the next 6 months. You don't need to know what the opportunity is, but God is just trying to say, get ready for that which I'm bringing your way. And you're like, oh, maybe I'll do it in 3 months' time, or I'll do it in a year's time. And then 6 months' time, the opportunity comes. Guess what? You won't be eligible because you are not ready. And that opportunity will pass on to somebody else. And you might even have to wait a full cycle before it comes to you again. And so it is important for us, to prepare for our next level. Changing our garments means preparing for your next level. It means we're getting ready. We're learning how to do things better. We're getting ready for it. We're getting ready to walk into it. It means you're able to see it with your eyes of faith. You might not, for example, as I am a coach, maybe there's a course God is saying to me, get that course ready I might be saying, but God, nobody's buying it right now. And he's saying, just prepare the course, just get it ready, because there are people that are going to need that course in 6 months' time. If you don't get it ready now, in at that 6 months, you won't even be able to do it anymore, because it will be too late. Because already they will go to somebody else because you don't have yours ready. So sometimes those are opportunities that pass us by. And so as God is prodding you, there are things that God is prodding you to get ready for, that you might think, I'm not ready now, but God is saying, just get ready, because I'm going to bring those opportunities into your life. Number 16 was Naomi told Ruth to get down to the floor and go to the place where Boaz was. So it's okay to change your garment. It's okay that she anointed her face. It's okay that she washed her face as Naomi told her to do. But guess what? She did all of those with preparation, and she never took action. It would have all been wasted. So Naomi had to say to her, you know what? Get down to the floor. Go to the place where Boaz was. What he was saying was, it's time to take action. It's not just enough for you to anoint your face. It's not just enough for you to, to wash your face. It's not just enough for you to get your garments on. It's not just enough for you to get your garments on at the right time. But now I need you to take action. And taking action can be very uncomfortable at times, because you're thinking, I don't feel comfortable. I don't even think I know how to do this. But she was saying to her, you might never have done this before, but you have the capacity. You have gotten ready. And that's another thing that happens, because once you have prepared for an opportunity, then guess what? You are confident enough to step into it. And so here she felt like she wasn't ready. But I believe that as believers, it's also a way that God prompts us. If you've gotten ready, He's created the opportunity for you. He's not going to help you step into that opportunity. He's going to wait for you. And so one of the lessons that Naomi taught her was, get into that place of that opportunity, because the opportunity is not going to come and meet you where you are. I have prepared it for you, but you're going to have to walk into that opportunity. You are going to have to do the working out. And some of those things, even in our everyday lives, sometimes there are things that God is calling us to do, and we're like, God, but I know I'm ready for it, but I don't want to take that step of faith. Hello, you can prepare from today till next year. You can do the trainings, you can do the courses, you can learn from mentors. Until you take that step of faith, nothing would happen. So we have to learn to be bold enough to, if God is saying step out. I always use the story of Peter, when the Bible talks about him walking on water. We say Peter likes to talk. Peter was this disciple that could talk he would talk for Jesus, he would talk for everybody, he would talk a lot. But he was the only one bold enough to walk on water. He was the only one bold enough to ask Jesus Christ to walk on water. He was the only bold, and we always say he's the only one that walked on water. The other disciples were not even bold enough to even say, Jesus, can we come and meet you? But he was bold enough to say, Master, bid me to come and meet you on the sea. And Jesus said yes. Why? Because he asked. So often, even if you get ready for those opportunities, but you never take action, it will always remain an opportunity. It will pass you by. The next opportunity will come, it will pass you by. You can keep preparing, but until you take action. I don't know why I'm hammering on that one. So maybe there's someone that is saying, oh yeah, there are things that God has called me to do, and I'm ready. I've prepared. I've been praying for the last 2 years. Hello, you still have to take action, which means you still have to step into those opportunities. God will not help you step into them. He has enabled you, but you are going to have to do the helping. And we saw that from the life of Esther. So she had been prepared. Now she was ready for the palace. And when she got into the palace, she was able to function because she was, willing to step into, and she had been prepared. So now you are prepared. Now you have to be confident enough in the God that is helping you to step into those opportunities, those places that is calling you to step into, those things that is calling you to do that look so scary, that look almost impossible. You have to say, God, you are the one that gave me the idea. You are the one helping me. You also help me to be able to walk in those, to walk with faith in this assignment. And he's always there to help us. That's what I love. He doesn't let you do it by yourself. He's always there holding your hand, helping you every step of the way. And number 17 that Naomi taught Ruth, the last purpose lesson was, Naomi told Ruth to shut her mouth when she came into Boaz's presence. So what she was saying here was that, Ruth had waited on God to move on her behalf. Ruth had done everything according to what Naomi said. Now was the time whereby she was required to just be quiet. And somebody might say, but why did Ruth have to follow all the instructions? Naomi knew some things that Ruth would never have known. Number one, Naomi might have known Boaz to an extent, but she also had experience. And now Ruth was leaning on this instruction. She had seen that, okay, I've done instruction 1, instruction 2, instruction 3, but she kept following the instructions because she believed that Ruth had some things that she needed to hear from, that she needed to hear from her. She needed her to instruct her on. And so she told her, and the same way, there are times that God brings us into places and we must practice what somebody calls the vocabulary of silence. You've gone in there, you've done your preparation, you've stepped into the place. Now you are only meant to show up. You are not even meant to say anything, but you go in there and you start talking and talking and talking and you talk yourself out of the opportunity. So here is a lesson to learn that there are times to talk and there are times to keep quiet. And here Naomi was teaching Ruth, when you come into Boaz's presence, all you need to do is be quiet. Just lay there. He will do the instructing. He will do the talking. Whatever he says to you, you don't talk before he talks. Don't say anything. And this happens even with us. Sometimes maybe you go to a place, for example, it could be a networking event. You have met somebody, you said what you need to say, and the person is trying to, pass something across to you, but you're just busy talking away, and you can't even get what God wanted you to get out of that, out of that meeting. And this is a lesson, for us, because if Ruth had gone in there and began to talk like she wasn't meant to, who knows what the outcome would have been. But she listened to Naomi, and that's the place of coaches. That's the place of having mentors that can help us, because this association was an association between, an elderly woman and a younger woman. An association between, I almost would say, a mentor and a mentee. An association between a coach and a coachee, or someone that you're coaching is an example. An association between an older woman and a younger woman. Whereby sometimes the other person thinks, oh, I already know. And when you are saying I already know, the person that is teaching you will do what? You keep quiet. Since you said you know. And when you say you know what happens? You miss out on the lessons that you're meant to learn. Maybe that person has made some mistakes and they're trying to share it with you, so you don't have to make the same mistakes they have made. But you are busy there just talking away, believing that you know everything. Maybe because you might be more technologically advanced than them. You might have more, you might have whatever it is that you have more than them. But at some point, maybe God is bringing you to this person. The session is for you to glean from them and learn from them. But instead of learning, when you go into their presence, instead of you asking them questions, what are you doing? You are the one doing all the talking. What happens? The person will keep quiet and let you talk, but then you will end up not learning anything. So that might be, talking to somebody. But really, those were the 7 purpose lessons that she learned. And guess what? At the end of that, after she went into Boaz's, presence and was quiet, guess what? Boaz was the one that called her to him. And the end of it, they say, is history, because he ended up getting married to Ruth. And because she had followed, Naomi's instructions, step by step by step. Why am I sharing this? There is power in association. But even as an association between a younger woman and an older woman, an association between, not necessarily, it might even be vice versa, but an association between someone that is mentoring you and someone that someone that is mentoring you and the person that is being mentored. It could be anyway, but these are 7 purpose lessons that you can learn that Ruth practiced them, and there were things that helped her to get to the purpose that God had for her life, because I'm sure she never would have imagined that she would be in the lineage of Jesus Christ. But here she was in the lineage of Jesus Christ just because she obeyed those instructions that that Naomi gave her. So even in your work of purpose, in the things that God is calling you to do, I want to say to her, be sensitive to the associations that God is bringing your way. Be sensitive to the people that God is bringing your way. Sometimes God brings people our way just to help us. They teach us. They show us their mistakes. They're vulnerable to show us so that we can learn. Because as we learn, we don't have to make the same mistakes that they made. As we learn, we don't have to say, okay, they've gone through, I have to go through it. No, they can teach you 10, they can save you 10 years just from sharing what they went through and it didn't work for them. And they say, oh, don't do that because I did it, and see what happened if you're going to do the exact same thing. So our thing is to listen. There's a place of discernment whereby the person is telling you one thing and God is saying, no, this is not the way I want to do it. But then there's also the place of God bringing those people into your life so that you can learn from them. I hope you've been able to glean one or two things from today's episode. I'll see you again next week.